Right. Okay, so I'm on Chasm Performance's new Sledgehammer. It's an off-the-shelf 333cc air-cooled engine, fits straight into a Lambretta chassis with very few bodywork modifications required.
On the right hand side you have to cut the footboard on the back for the exhaust and nothing else. On the left hand side you have to cut a little bit the footboard around the cylinder cooling, because the cooling is bigger and it can touch the footboard. For the carb, on series 1 and 2 with the low profile filter you don't have to do a hole in the side panel. I have made it because I like it. And on a series 3 or GP you have to do the hole for the filter. Also the fuel tank have to be modified because the carb is behind the engine mounts. So like in this scooter you need to have a cut here. We also go in production with the oil tank for the Sledgehammer with a cut in this side and the battery space.
It answers a question that's been asked for a long time, which is why none of their engines are actually really that well suited to touring. There's always been a gap in their thing. They make the SST, but then they also use that for their endurance racing engine. So they know it's good, but I think the majority of Lambretta riders don't need that much power. So I am doing 1600 revs, maybe 2000 now, climbing a hill in third gear, and I can open the throttle full and it doesn't splutter, it just accelerates. So what I'm looking for in an engine that's for touring is something that's super easy to ride, and I think the 333 delivers that. Punches out of corners, but it's also effortless to ride. You know that when you open the throttle, I can ride around these hairpins in a choice of 3 gears. It would go around here in first, second or third, and a 4-speed box. Might even pull fourth. Let's try. That's a little bit too much. I'm doing 30k. I'm doing 30 kilometers an hour, which is about 20 miles an hour, and it's still pulling up this hill in 4th gear. So, and it's accelerating as well now. So that comes from having low exhaust port timing. It's somewhere around 170 something. So even though on this video you're not getting any motorway bits, I have done that. Did some dual carriageway with this, and with a different exhaust it was going up to over 140 kilometers an hour, but it sits very happily at 125, 120, 125, something like that, and the temperatures are low. The most I saw was at 185. So the engine produces about between 30 and 32 horsepower at the moment. They're still experimenting with exhaust, trying to find the exact combination that they need, which doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's the way it delivers that power that's interesting, in that it's so super proportional on the throttle and the RPM. The harder it revs, the more power it makes, and also the more throttle you put on, the faster it goes. So it makes it predictable, and you can ride it without thinking. It's like a standard engine, but much more. Another great thing about this being a 333 is that it comes with a much larger crank, so everything has been designed to cope. There's less chance of the crank twisting because it's wider on the webs, as well as larger diameter, so it grips the pin, which has always been a weakness of the Lambretta, is that the crankshafts twist when you put too much power through them. That's still an issue today with lots of performance cranks. So when you can start with a crankshaft like this, which weighs 3 kilos, you can balance it better. At the end of the day, it's a single cylinder motor, so there's always going to be some vibes, but it's really not that intrusive. At the moment it's running a 30mm carb, which is small for an engine of this capacity, but one of their objectives has been to get good fuel consumption, and I know from riding together with another Series 1 that's got a BGM 195 on it, depending on how hard you're riding, this actually has been using about the same fuel or even less than the BGM 195, because you simply don't have to open the throttle very much to keep up, so fuel economy is actually pretty decent. Another great benefit of this layout is that it only needs 2% oil, rather than 4% that you might have with a cylinder reed valve kit. So you halve the oil consumption. You can afford to run better oil, and also if you are actually touring, you've got half as much to carry, which is that's actually a big deal. You know, if you need to carry 4 litres of oil on a scooter to do a big journey, and you can manage now with 2 litres, that's a massive deal. It's 2 kilos saved, but it's also a lot of the space that you save as well. The layout of this is really quite old school, which is again deliberate. They've made it single exhaust port, so an exhaust port isn't that big. The transfer duct layouts are very conventional, and all of that is just so the engine lasts. The design, you know, it's designed to do a lot of miles before it needs a service, or you know, without a change of piston or piston rings. And at the moment, you know, with all the parts that they put in it, it doesn't seem to have an obvious weak link, where on many other engines you'd say the crankshaft or perhaps the clutch was the weak link. As far as cons are concerned, it isn't super easy to start at the moment. They've got a decompression hole in the cylinder, but they could have a bigger one. So it does take a little bit of a jump to get it going, particularly with this LR150 box. It seemed easy with the 5-speed.
So for a partially assembled engine, I think the price will be around 3,800 euros, included of VAT, and you have the engine casing with the reed valve and inlet manifold, cylinder kit, head cowling, and what else?
Crankshaft.
Crankshaft, yeah, engine mounts fitted, yeah.
Okay, and you just got to put in your ignition.
Yes, ignition, or the transmission, gearbox, clutch, and yeah, some little parts like linkage or...
I would say that you perhaps could get this power much more cheaply in another way. There's some really powerful PX kits on the market now if you've got a Vespa, and there's also, you can tune plenty of Lambrettas up over 32 horsepower, but the point being, you're compromised on all the same things that you've always been compromised on. The strength of the casing for one, so then you start to think about upgrade casings, and then you're up to the same sort of money as this. Decent crankshafts, You know, it's all expensive stuff. So, as regards a sorted package that will do what you want, I'd have one of these. So, what's the difference between this engine and the SSR and SST? Well, both those are engines that I enjoy riding. So it gives me something to like that to play with. But neither of them were engines that I preferred to what I'd ride on the road, because I wanted better fuel consumption. I didn't want to use too much oil for doing the journeys that I do, going to rallies. I preferred what I had, which was a tuned TS1. Now they've made something that I prefer over what I ride day to day. So I've got a feeling this engine, when it finally sinks in with people what it's about, is going to sell very well. Because I think a lot of people, when they ride with somebody who's got one, will realise what it's for. Listen to that pull out of that corner. They'll realise what it's for. And what the benefits are of having something that's really talky and easy to ride. But I'd have it with a 5-speed box if I had a choice, because it is much more fun with one of those. Yeah, one of the great things about having an engine that produces power at such low revs is that you can potter through, if you don't want to cause a fuss and you don't want to draw attention to yourself, you can potter through making not much noise like a standard bike. Exactly in this sort of situation where you've got a shitload of police motorbikes. I think he just put his thumb up to me.